Okay, so I'm going to do a quick demo on families, focusing on system families in Revit, which is one of those, I suppose, little understood concepts, but really important in Revit. And I'm just going to make a new file using the architectural template, just so I can demonstrate that. So the first thing I suppose you need to realise about system families is that they really can only exist in a project file. If you make a family file, so remember a project file is made from a template file, which is an RTE file, and then when you save it, it's an RVT file. So if we go to, I'll just cancel this, if we go to Save As, just to go over the formats, Save As Project, so you mostly know this, RVT is the format for a project file. And then for families, if you make a new family file, it's made with an RFT file, that's a Revit family template file, and then when you save a family, it's an RFA file, which is what you'll see when you look in the library. All of those files are Revit family files. We can't see the extension there because it's hidden, but I guarantee you it's an RFA. Well, you can see down here, RFA file. So you need to be familiar with those formats. But then what you might have noticed already, when you go to make a new family using those templates, say you want to make a railing. Where is the railing template? The answer is there isn't one. And that tells you, or maybe gives you a little hint, that a railing is actually a system family. You can't make a railing family. Walls also are system families. So here you'll see there's no metric wall template. There's no metric floor template, and there's no metric ceiling template, because those again are all system families. So how do you work with system families? Firstly, I'll just use one of the most simple examples, which is a wall. So if I click on the wall tool, and I'll just draw something. Okay, so if I select that wall, go to Edit Type, then you can see at the top, it tells you it's a system family. And notice there's no load option. It's grayed out, okay, because you can't load system families. If you're interested in the technical side of things, you don't need to really understand all of this, but if you're interested, it's hard-coded into the program, so you cannot make system families from scratch. It's something that the programmers have developed, and it's a discrete element. In other words, it's an object that has certain properties that are defined that are restricted. You can't add or remove any of those properties. They're set by the programmers, which is different to a regular family. In a family that you can make your own parameters and constraints and modify them. So why do you need to know all these things? Well, like I said before, you might want to get a railing from a library. So I'm going to make a railing, just like the wall. This chain turned off. Okay, I'll just turn the chain back on. Okay, so I'm going to just make a railing. Oops. Cancel that, finish it, and we'll look at that in 3D. And it's the normal, pretty ugly default railing with the vertical balusters, which I've never used, so I'll change that to one of the others. You can see we've only got the 4 preloaded railings. So have any of you worked out how to get railings from the library into a project file like this? Exactly, copy and paste. That's the best way. So and that gives you an idea how system family types can be stored. So if I open, so the trick, I suppose, well, the thing to remember is when you want to get different, it's not really system families, but it's types of system families. And I'll show you what that means in a second. You don't go to load family, either insert, you've got the load family option there, or as you place a component, you can of course click load family. But when you go to make a railing, there's no load family option because it's not that sort of family. So like you're saying, you go to open instead, and this is, I think, the thing you've got to force yourself if you're on autopilot going to load every time. Instead of going here and then choosing open and choosing one of these sub options, just click where it says open. And that's going to open every type of Revit file there. So, and it's a good thing to know about Windows. When you see a button like this, see how the open button has a line there next to the arrow? That means it's a button that you can click. If it doesn't have a line, so see how Save As, there's no line next to the arrow, that means it's not a button. So if I click Save As, it won't do anything. But if I click Open, it'll open any file. And the important thing there is that it's down the bottom going to open all Revit file types. RVT, RFA, RTE, or the other one which you never use, ADSK. So that's important. We need to be able to open any Revit file, and now I can just use the shortcut here to go to the metric library, and then go to sample files, and then you've got these great files that have been shipping with Revit since day one for things like railings. Fences are really just railings. So I'll open up the railings one to start with. Might take a second. Okay, so we've got all these pre-made railings ready to go. So then to select them, it's easy. You can just click to select. Let's get one that's a little bit interesting. So let's get this one. So you select it and use copy to clipboard. And then using the switch windows option up here, you can switch back easily to the file you've been working in. And then under modify, choose paste. Okay, if you get any messages about materials, just click OK. And then click anywhere to place it. Doesn't matter where you place it, because normally you'll delete that. Okay, so I don't need to keep that particular railing. I've just pasted it into this file to get the type. So the important concept there is that I haven't brought in any new system families. The system family is still railing, but it's added this type, and that's what you make when you use duplicate. You're making a new type of a family. And so this one's called Parapetto 09. So that's now added to my list. So I can choose any other railing in this file and change it to Parapetto 09. So that's how you can move railing types from one file to another, and that applies to every system family. So walls are another one, and I'll show you if I go and open again. I think I'll have a folder, not here, I need to go to another folder. So I've copied a library over on this drive here, which has another folder. This is one that used to ship with Revit. You don't get it anymore, but if you hunt around, you'll find this folder called System Family Files, and it's got a lot of the UK sample files. So this one has walls. There it is. Okay, so you've got all these pre-made walls. And again, you can just select any of those. Copy to clipboard. I'm going to use this really handy option you've got next to the switch windows button. There's that button there. I don't know if you know about that one. That just closes any extra hidden windows, and it makes it easier to switch files. Okay, so again, now I can just paste, put the wall anywhere. I don't need to keep it. I'm going to delete that. It's called, I know what it's called. So now I can choose any of these walls, and I've got that new, more complex wall type. It's that easy. Okay, so that can help you a lot. I mean, I think the main reason people use that at first is to get things like railings, and another similar object that is also a system family are stairs. So also in here, there's a stairs file. If you go to the normal metric library in sample files, there's a stairs file there as well. Okay, so lots of good pre-made stairs. Okay, so again, same idea, select it, copy to clipboard, switch to the other file, and just paste it, put it anywhere. And then any stairs you make, I'll make one that's completely different. Maybe I'll make a spiral stair. Oh, now, actually, there's one thing to watch out for here. That's an assembled stair. So here, I'm going to go to stair by component, not stair by sketch. So that's actually a new thing with Revit 2016. I'll talk to you about that in a second. Okay, so there's my new stair. And so this one was a metal pan stair, so I can choose this stair now and change it to metal pan stair. It's actually quite similar to the one that I've made, but it'll change a little bit. There we are. So that works, but one little thing to watch out for, if you use stair by sketch, or any of you still using that way of making stairs, I still do. I actually think it's a really handy tool, but try not to rely on it too much because with Revit 2018 they've taken it out. You only have stair by component in the new one. And don't be afraid of that because with stair by component you still can do everything that you could do with stair by sketch. You just have to use the that create sketch option to get to it. But they're not interchangeable. So I'll make a stair with stair by sketch just so that you can see. Okay, so that is, it's a system family, so you can see there's system family stair. The other one, it's also a system family, but it's an assembled stair. And with this new stair by component routine, they've actually got 3 system families that you have as to choose from. With the old stair by sketch, you've only got the one called stair. I suppose the thing that's the practical side of that is that they're not interchangeable. So if you remember, I pasted in this one, which was we know it's called metal pan stair. I can change this one because it's an assembled stair. I can change that to metal pan stair. But the other one I made with stair by sketch, I don't have that option because it's a different system family.
There was an issue with that stair by component with the automatic numbering system.
Yeah, yeah.
Has that been resolved?
Oh well, it's you just need to get the that's another system family. The numbering is actually a special system family. Yeah. Yeah, no, you've got to add a run number or something. I've forgotten what it's called, but yeah, it's a system family. So, yeah, and it's in annotation. So I'd have to look at this, but it's actually really good. I actually went and changed all my a lot of my stairs for some of my projects to system or to stair by component or to assembled stairs so that I can get the numbering. And I'll just have to remember where it is. I haven't done it for a couple of weeks. Here it is, chat numbers. So yeah, so that's that's the wrong type of stair. There we are. So that's see there we are. So that's not going to work on this one because that's stair by sketch.
And it gives you sort of location where you get like inside, middle.
Oh yeah. It's actually better, and you can then define all of that in the family. So it's it's great. It works better than stair by sketch, but and you can move it. I think from memory, or do you have to edit the family? But again, it's another.
At North Point, in terms of section, the automatic stair numbering was sort of seeing it was obscured. It was just that they could move it up or move it down just to get it a little bit.
Oh, you can, yeah. So I've got my own stair number family.
Yeah.
And here, but you can. I think you can put offsets in there. There we are.
Oh, okay.
And let's say minus 100 or something. And that's that's. Let's just go minus because it's in paper. I think maybe. There we go. So it'll be. Am I going the wrong way? Yeah, you can adjust that. I'd have to play with it, but it should be working. Now it's lost it. Yeah, you definitely can get that to work. Oh, there we are. That's better. So let's try to. There we are.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty good, and yeah, when you're doing the numbering in section, it's even better. Yeah. So yeah. So and then the other one actually that's not obvious is that the run is another family. So to have the tag, you put in the path is another family. It's another system family, believe it or not. So when you select that, see when you go edit type, that's another system family. So if you want to get that from another file, again, you've got to use that copy and paste method, and that does work. But maybe I'll show you what happens. Sometimes you can't just copy and paste. Certain things aren't selectable in that way. So there is another way, and that is to paste it directly into the family section in your project browser. That works as well. So you can go here, right click, and it's not there because I haven't got the right option, but you've got the option to paste there in some cases. So I thought one of the reasons I thought it'd be a good idea to show you this now is partly because if you've been using Revit for a long time, like you all have, then it's much easier to understand those things. If you explain it at first, it just will go over most people's heads. You won't know what a system family is. But also, now that you're doing detailing, it'll help you to understand some of these detail families, because you have detail components which are pretty straightforward. They're just a 2D family. And they're great. I use detail families all the time. And you can make your own detail families. Just make a new family, and then detail item is the template that you can use. And you can either draw lines. The nice thing about detail families is that you can also draw filled regions, which you might have noticed you can't do in many other family types. So if you've tried to make a furniture family, for example, or lots of others, most of the family types, you can't make filled regions. It just isn't an option. Again, these family templates are actually a bit of programming where they decided to give you certain options built into that template, and you can't change those templates. So the templates are almost part of the software. So, but again, with detail families, if you've ever needed to make a family with a filled region, use a detail family. So that's great, and you can again also insert AutoCAD. So I've just copied across some AutoCAD things so that I can show you that. Here we are. So I've got some AutoCAD drawings here, and maybe I'll just grab something fairly simple, like here we go, that'll do. That was very small, so I'll just have to find it. There it is. It's pinned. So let's put that back into the origin. But that's natural, it's a small thing, it should be small. Okay, so there's my imported AutoCAD line work. Let's go down to a smaller scale even. So you can manage the line weights. I don't know how much you've done with AutoCAD, but it really does help when you get to this level with Revit, if you have a good understanding of AutoCAD as well. They're designed to work hand in hand together. Particularly for detailing. So to manage the lines in an AutoCAD file, or something you've imported from AutoCAD, you need to go to Manage and then Object Styles. And then under Imported Objects, you've got the layers from AutoCAD. So just to give you a quick example, say I want to change the colour. Let's just go for something different. And the line weight, just make that a bit heavier. And you can change it all. So you can set all of that up in a family, and so you might be thinking, why would I use a family instead of some of the other methods? Because there are other methods. You can use drafting views, so it's good if you know about drafting views. They are a great thing in Revit. Just quickly show you that. So if you don't know about drafting views, they're a 2D view in Revit, really useful, and they're actually meant for mostly AutoCAD things to be imported and then placed on your sheet, so that's a good thing to know about. But if you do, if you're doing a lot of repeated details that way, you're going to need to keep duplicating those views, because Revit won't let you put the view on more than one sheet. So you end up with lots of duplicates, and that means you then have to make lots of groups for those details to keep repeating, which is a lot of work. It also makes the file really heavy.
So this is the actually did that with the AWS AutoCAD one, so
Yeah.
you had the drafting view, imported the drafting view,
Yeah.
and did that,
Then
used that
grouped it.
and then
Yeah, yeah. And it works, but that means that the file, it stores those lines over and over again. It gets really
she
big,
exploded,
yeah.
but only partially exploded. So we ended up with like a transom head
Yeah.
and the bracket were all the separate, but we didn't completely explode it. So
Yeah.
it's sort of controlled a little bit the size.
Yeah, yeah. And it works, but yeah, but if you make a detail family, then it only stores it once, and then it just stores the insertion point each time it's inserted. And so that's just a file management thing. And then what it can also help you with, finally, is repeating details, which is one of the great things in Revit that they've had from the beginning, but isn't used probably as much as it should be, because again, they're a system family, and a lot of people just don't know how to get them into their files. So if we go to here, annotate under component, you might have seen you've got detail components and then these repeating details. Okay, so I'll just show you this one. So instead of putting a single brick, you can have it do a string of bricks or a wall. And that's great for overlaying on details. You've got them for all sorts of things, but in this project file, I've just got the one repeating detail loaded called brick. So how do I get the others? Just like the other system families. Open, browse to the metric library, and then again sample files, and there is a repeating details file. It's a project file. I'm going to open that. So you might have wondered about things like roofing. That's a common thing you need to show in sections, and people think sometimes they might even have to model it in 3D just to get a section to show how they want, and that's going to make your file again really heavy, and it's not necessary. You've got here all the standard profiles, or enough to get started anyway, and so that's in cross section, I suppose, and then you've got sections going the other way. So these are again repeating details, so I'm going to select this one with the terracotta tiles, I suppose they are, and copy to clipboard using the window menu, switch back to my project, go to plan view, and then I'll just paste that somewhere. Okay, now I don't need to keep that particular detail anymore. I can then just go to annotate, component, repeating details, and now it's added this new one to the list, and I can draw that at any angle, get as many tiles as I want. It's that easy. So it's that copy and paste method really that you've got to remember. If you look in the help menu and the tutorials, there actually are some pretty good written tutorials that Autodesk put out with most releases of Revit. They've got one called the Revit Family Guide, which is about 300-400 pages just on families that I've read a few times, and it's got a whole chapter just on what I've been showing you. But even there, it shows a longer way of essentially copying and pasting by pasting into, instead of pasting it into a view like this, they show you that you can paste it, like I was saying, into the families section down here. It does work, but I think it's just as easy to copy and paste manually using the, also into a view, using, copy and paste up here. So the final thing I'll say about that is that unfortunately the shortcuts don't always work. Don't ask me why, but Control-C and Control-V sometimes don't do what they should. So if it doesn't seem to be working, just use the buttons up here. Especially with paste, because usually you want to choose one of the options from that sub-menu anyway. So hopefully that'll make it a bit clearer when you're working with families, especially system families, and might give you an idea then about the hierarchy of objects in Revit. Because essentially the system families are normally going to be the more, I don't want to say the more important things, but the things that host families. So floors, for example, will often host furniture. Railings actually are a system family as well, like I was saying. So railings will host other families. So when you look at a railing, it hosts all these subfamilies. That's a bad example, so I'm going to change it to the pipe one. So it hosts profile families in here in the railing. So the railing is made with these in this case, these circular profile families. So they're a family that you can modify and make easily. Then in the balusters settings, you'll see it's got all these different baluster families. They're another family that you can, component family that you can make and modify. And then the final thing, and this is, I think, well, if any of the guys from Autodesk are listening, I'll just say it. I think it's a really stupid decision they made to make top rails a system family. It's a ridiculous decision, right? Because has anyone tried to change the material of a top rail and wondered, how do you do this? It's not in here. You can't do it in here. So how do you do it? Well, once you know it's a system family, it's much easier, because you can go down into the family section in your project browser, find railings, and then in there you'll see top rails. So there's a top rail type, and then the only way to change the properties is to select the one you want to change, right click, go to type properties, and finally there is the material option for the top rail. The rails, the material for the rest of the rails are in the rail properties. So I actually don't use top rails if I can help it. I just use rails for all of them most of the time. But if I have to use a top rail, then yeah, that's what you have to do to change it. And once you know that, there are lots of objects like that actually that you can only change by going into here. But as long as you know that, all of the families in your project, whether they're system families or loadable families is what the others are called. They're in that list there, down the bottom. And so maybe very last thing, you can see there, just to maybe reinforce what I've been talking about, walls. If you don't believe me, there are only 3 wall families in Revit. That's all there is. There are lots of types. You can make as many wall types as you like. So most of the walls you've been making would have been basic walls. And then when you make a new wall, a new basic wall, what you're doing is you're duplicating one of those wall types to make a wall that has essentially different layers. And if you think I'm using the wrong terminology, that's what they're called in Revit. A layer in Revit is one of these things in a wall or a floor that's stacked up, just to confuse everyone. It's not like AutoCAD layers. And so again, you've only got those 3. Yeah, basic wall, curtain wall is your curtain walls, and stacked walls. Stacked walls.
Stacked wall is separate.
Yeah, yeah. And a stacked wall is just either basic walls, or you can have curtain walls as well, stacked on top of each other.
Well, you put a stacked wall in there, didn't you?
I think that one might have been. Yeah, I'll have a look. I didn't even look at the properties. But no, that's just a basic wall. But it's got banding built in with the other. There's that other method you can use to do that using the this is getting really cryptic, but they said they were going to take this out, but it's still there. You've got the option to edit in section, which is, I won't go into that because it's a little bit tricky, but you can do it. So if you're interested, I played around with a lot with this years ago, but it's getting a bit off topic. But that's a really interesting thing too. But it's you use this section down here to do that, to build in sweeps. Yeah. So anyhow, that's good to know that those 3 wall types, and it's kind of reassuring in a way once you know that with walls you've only got those 3 wall families, and you can do everything you need with those. How many floor families do you reckon there'd be? I'll click on the plus in a second and you'll see. I'll give you, it's less than walls. 1. Yeah, well, you've got slab edges. So so technically 2. Slab edges aren't really a floor, but yeah, they are a system family though. Yeah, but really you've just got 1 floor system family. So if you go to make a floor, you'll only have 1 option.
What about roofs?
Roofs is 2. So yeah, so you've got slope glazing, and slope glazing's great. So yeah, so with roofs, they give you, if you haven't seen slope glazing, well, see again, you get more coming up in the list there. But it's only basic roofs and slope glazing that are actual roofs. Fascias, gutters and sophites get attached to a roof. So yeah, if you don't know about slope glazing, this is one of my favourite things that I use for all sorts of roofs, even if they're not glass, because I do a lot of designs where I steal the style from a guy called Rick LaPlastia. He, hopefully you'll know, is an amazing architect, and he does a lot of purlins and rafters aligned with his glazing bars and mullions. So it's beautiful the way you have these exposed rafters then connecting to the clear story with the glazing bars all lining up perfectly. And so to achieve that in Revit, instead of using model in place to model in every raft, or even worse, trying to use the structural beam systems, which is a lot of work, you can use these slope glazing options, put in a frame, and I'll just very quickly do that. So I'm just going to choose some random options here, and I'll just do some interior mullions. I'm not going to show you the full method, but just get you started. Okay, so that way you can get a frame for your roof. If you haven't seen that option, that's a great thing. Now at the moment that's got glass. With the trick I use, I raise that panel to the top of the frame, so it's sitting on top of those, well, effectively those rafters, and then you have these as the rafters and the purlins underneath, or the battens, whatever you want to call them, and it looks like a roof frame, which you might have seen. ArchiCAD's had that option for a long time. That a lot of people think you can't do it with Revit, but of course you can. So, truss. Oh, yeah, you've got all. Of course, yeah. So you've got all the structural systems. So yeah, you've got trusses. You want to look at trusses. Yeah, trusses can be quite tricky. I'll show you. So you've got the truss families. They're really set up for engineers to use. So they do all sorts of structural calculations. So I'll just put one in there so you can see it. But they often don't look very good. So you can see there the beams don't the cords aren't connecting very well, and it's okay. But if you want something that looks really nice, and that when you're doing architectural drawings, you're really more after the look quite often than something that's structurally correct. You might be better off modelling your own, and that's what I normally do. So I just make my own. It's quick to model something like that, but the trick is not to rely on using model in place all the time. Try and get into the habit of, if it's repeated, and my basic rule is if I'm using it more than once, I will really try and force myself never to use model in place. If it's repeated, make a family. Do the hard work and make a separate family, and you'll save yourself a lot of work when you're working in the project. Yeah, I normally model them, especially if it's timber, just to get the joints right. Yeah. So I model them. Yeah. And you can still make it a structural. You can still use the structural templates. What you'll find as well, though, with those structural elements, they do things like this. Now I can show you how to fix that, but if you make it yourself, you don't have to worry about that issue. Do you know what the problem is there? Sorry? Oh, they're not connecting yet. What is? Exactly, that's right, it's spot on, yeah. So there are different visibility settings. You can set objects to show differently, whether it's coarse, medium, or fine. So this is in coarse, and most structural elements, not just trusses, columns are the same. If you make a structural column, you would have come across this issue as well, where they'll often just look like a line. In architectural drawings, you don't want to see a line. You're not an engineer. You want to see what the column looks like, so you want to see the geometry like that. So the quick way is just to change to either medium or fine, and you will see the actual geometry. But you can, I won't show you how, but you can make it show in coarse if you want to. But often a better option again, if you're doing a lot of them, especially things like trusses or timber columns, have a go at making your own family, because they're quite simple things to model, and then you've got total control over it when you put it in your file. But more importantly, if you have an understanding which things you can make, so you can't make a wall family, it just isn't an option in Revit, but when you go and make a new family, you see then the list of templates of families that you can make. And I know I've said the last thing a few times, but I will say one last thing, because there are times when you need to make a custom, say, wall family. And it is possible, not as a separate loadable family, but using model in place. It's similar to making a new family from a template, but you'll notice here that there are quite a few categories that weren't available with the templates, such as floors, walls, ceilings. That's a really important one, because often you need vaulted ceilings and things like that, which you can only make using model in place. And again, so with walls, that's a really good example. Say you need a spline-based wall. The only way is to use model in place, and then you can make any shape you like, even though splines in Revit are probably the worst bit of geometry there is, but they work. And so I'll just make something like a mass structure or something. And there we go, just get that snap to the end. It will. Can't stand splines. There we are. So, okay, so I've got this unusual shaped wall, which we'll make a bit taller. And it's important that you understand that, because that can still host doors and other things, because as far as Revit's concerned, it's still a wall, even though it's been modelled as a custom object. So I thought those things that might just help to clear up a lot of the technical side of the things you do with families in Revit, and especially just from a practical point of view, help you to get some of those things in the libraries which you may have seen. Hopefully you've been browsing through the libraries just to see what's available, and those things in sample files are all system families, fences, another one. They're just railings. But how often do you need a fence? Most projects you're going to need to put a fence in at some point, so you just copy and paste those, and then you can use them in any project. There we go. So I don't know if there's any questions about those things. That's all pretty clear. Yeah, great. So I'll put that on YouTube.